Greetings, friends and future friends. Today's video is on the Korg Pa5x. I call this video FX2. Now, last week we saw how you can take these effects loops, an IFX or a master effects loop, and create effects and add them to either your style, to your key set, or even pads. But today I want to show you how these effects work, what they are. Let's take a closer look at the effects themselves and how we can use them. There are so many great effects in here, and I really suggest that you go in there and experiment with them because they're really high quality effects and they can change your sound dramatically. So let's go in the studio and see how those things work. Okay, I've got the Korg Pa5x all fired up. I have an example style on player 1, and I have my key set on test. And if we go to mixer, just to give you an example of what we're dealing with, upper 1 is a synth sound. And upper 2 is a guitar sound. And upper 3 is a string sound. Okay, let's go to sound 1, upper 1. Let's go to mixer and go insert effects and tap on the 3 dashes. Now, first I want to show you that all these effects, bypass, amplifier, delay, dynamics, filter, frequency, mixed, modulation, and reverb, can also be accessed through the master effects. So you can have all these effects on the inserts and the master effects. So let's go down through these effects. Now, I'm not going to go into amplifier with the synth sound, but let's go to delay first. LCR delay. And what that is that it means it's an echo or a delay on the left, the center, and the right. And you have and go back to this. And we have stereo cross delay, which this is going to be a delay of left and right. And it's going to add a little feedback to each one and give you a stereo spread. And back to stereo multi-tap. Now, the multi-tap will mean that it's going to take and give you one delay and then give you another delay. You can see here you have a tap delay of 350 milliseconds, and then the second tap is at 500. And you can actually add tap feedback and all that to this one. Another handy delay to have. And go back up here. Now we have stereo mod delay. And basically this is going to add a little bit of a modulation to it. And if we go to stereo dynamic delay. Now what this is going to do, and you can't really hear it that well, but it's going to give you a delay on the amount of velocity. So if I touch the keys lightly, but if I hit them hard, so it adds a little bit of dynamics to that. And we go over here to stereo audio pan. Now what we're doing is now we're going to do the same thing, modulation, but only it's going to pan. And tape echo. Basically just like a tape machine. And again, you're going to have multiple taps. So each delay, each tap will have an effect. We can adjust the taps. And sequence BPM. And this is actually going to give you you're going to see down there BPM, it says MIDI, but it actually will give you the signal. So in other words, what it's going to do is lock on the delay, and the delay is going to be corresponding with the beats per minute. That's really cool if you want to add delay, because sometimes you want to add a delay in time with the music. And we go to, now this is the same thing as the first. It's a left, center, right delay, but it's also working off, the delay is working off the MIDI, which is the beats per minute. And stereo beats per minute, another stereo beats per minute, or the beats per minute will dictate the delay. And if we go to 2, we have stereo, same thing, stereo multi-tap and stereo modulation delay. The modulation delay is the same thing now, but we're only working with the delay is based on the beats per minute. And again, here's the notes without the effect. And with them on, and the last one, tape echo and classic tape echo is, the tape echo BPM is the same thing as tape echo, but only, again, you're using the delay. If we go in here and take a look at it, you're using delay. Beats per minute is actually going to dictate what the length of the delay is. And classical tape echo, this is like an old tape machine. We can add time. I like that it changes pitch just like a tape machine would when you're speeding up the tape and slowing down the tape. And that about wraps up the delays. Okay, let's go on to dynamics. So dynamics is basically compressors and limiters. And if you're familiar with how to use a compressor, so if we go to the stereo compressor, and basically what you're going to see here is the ins and outs. And if you notice right here, you can see the compression. So if we go over here to sensitivity, you can see it changes the gain. And basically it's compressing that signal. So we go over here to stereo limiter, and it's going to work the same way, only the threshold. You can see now that right here, the gain, now it's compressing it. Where if we back it off, so it's a stereo limiter. And a mastering limiter. Now the mastering limiter actually would take and do the same thing as any limiter. It's going to basically limit the sound. Now you can see that the sound is not limited at all when we increase the threshold or minus the threshold. But then you can see it peaking out. Now you can see this is staying in the green. So right now we're in the green. But when we get rid of a little bit of that, You can see it almost peaks out to the red. Stereo mastering limiter is something you would want to put on the back end of any instruments or something in your mix, in your style. You want to have the last thing that goes out. And stereo multiband limiter, basically it's doing the same thing. And here's the ratios of the limits. Okay, dynamic compressor. And basically what that is doing is, if we go to it, it's basically a compression pedal. So it's going to compress that sound on the amount of attack that you bring in and kind of compress the signal down so it doesn't sound so distorted. Okay, now let's look at filters. Stereo parametric EQ. And all this is a 4-band EQ. And if we go over here to the highs and I play the notes, it just EQs at that frequency. Now, this EQ, a parametric EQ, it's simple to understand. This is the frequency that you're going to add or subtract. This is the amount you add or subtract. And then the Q is basically the slope of the EQ. So if we wrap this thing all the way up to 18 plus, that means at 10K, it's going to jump up to 18 plus. But the amount of slope, when you increase this number, you're going to increase that slope from that. So 10K is at 18. Well, maybe 8K would be at 10. But if this slope is real sharp, that means it's going to go all the way to that 10K and then jump up. When this is wide and it's a wide spread, then that means it's going to taper up. So the other frequencies will be, their characteristics will be changed because of that slope. So, and it's basically a, parametric EQ. Okay. And let's go back. Same thing. Now this is a 6-band EQ. And it's basically saying the same thing. Now what it's doing is it's giving you the 4 bands of EQ up on top, then a high pass and a low pass down below. And stereographic, that's just basically a graphic EQ, 7-band graphic EQ. Then stereo exciter and enhancer. This is basically an exciter and enhancer. So what you're going to do is enhance the sound with a little bit of delay, the depth and trim, and basically the exciter blend. So we have this engaged. Take it out. Kind of like a BBE 882 in the studio. It enhances and excites the music. All right, the stereo isolator. It's something you probably won't use much, but basically it was a effect that we used to use in direct boxes to keep those stereo signals straight, the frequencies straight. Kind of an example would be like a fancy soup strainer. You might not be using this effect only on the bottom end, or if you have samples that are really noisy and there's a cross between the frequencies, because basically what this is doing is just straightening out the frequency bands. So, and making sure that they're all set up correctly. So, let's go back and look, stereo wah and auto wah. And basically that's... And if we go to LF, and there's a lot of things you can do with this. And basically it's working off of the velocity and changing the wah. And if we actually go to auto, is back. Pretty cool. Stereo vintage wah. Again, we go to LF. It gives you nice auto wah. Random filter. Basically, it's taking a random wave file. Now, if we make that a try, but if we make it random, turn it off, and stereo multi-tap filter. And a lot of things you can do with that sound. Okay, let's go to frequency, our stereo sub oscillator. Now, you're not going to hear it too clear, but you can hear a trace of it. A little bit of a wah sounding, because what you're doing is changing the frequency and the resonance of that frequency and making it sound like almost like a little bit of noise in the background, a little bit of static. Let's go to grain shifter. Grain shifter is just basically an effect. Let's change this wet to 50-50 so you can hear it a little better. And again, the resampling cycle, you can change all these other things you can change. And it sounds pretty cool when you use the joystick. Detune, pretty easy. All it's doing is adding 20 clicks to that shift to give you kind of a coursing effect. We changed that. Now we went up a full half step. Really cool. And pitch shift, pretty easy. All we're doing here is actually dropping down -12, so we got an octave. Pitch shift, pretty easy to understand. Pitch shift, now this will work with the beats per minute. And basically the delay, it'll have the pitch change, but the delay of that pitch change will be dictated by MIDI, which will be the beats per minute of your style. Pitch shifter, this is one of my favorites. Change the Okay, let's go into mixed. And what mixed is sometimes you'll have two effects. Now, stereo disseminator. Really, to be honest with you, I really don't see how this thing, when you play a chord sometimes, you can hear it changing when frequency spans. you can hear a little wobble in the frequency bands, but it's very minute. So let's go to stereo analog record. And basically, this is really a wild thing here. We got it on wet. Let's bring this down. Let's bring this down. Basically, we're dry now, so we're playing. This is a really cool effect. I don't know where you'd use it, but you could. Stereo analog record. We have 33, 45, and 78. We'll put on 45. And it'll actually add noise to the sound like it was a record. Hear the noise? If we increase make it even more. So now you've actually added noise like you were playing a 45 record or a 33. This would probably be one of those master effects. Really cool. And Doppler. So the next effect is called Doppler, and it's really cool. And we exit it. Now I have it set on loop, and if we hit an E chord, and we can also make it on one shot. Now we have it on wet, but we could bring it down to 50-50 so you can see what I'm doing when I hit the keys. All right, next effect, scratch. Now this is pretty cool. Now this doesn't really work on the notes, but it works on the plus joystick. So when I push up on the joystick, it actually plays this scratch. That's pretty cool if you're DJing. Auto reverse. And basically it's going to create a gate and then reverse it playing back. So when you hit the note, if we go down to dry wet, I'll show you. Here's what I'm playing dry. (50-50). Pretty cool effect, kind of a auto reverse gate. And this is now again, bring up this multiple effects. So on the top, we have a 4-band EQ. On the bottom, we have a chorus. So up here, you would change the EQ. On the bottom here, chorus and flanger, you would change that. And same thing with the phaser. It would be the same thing. We have a and multi-tap delay, same thing. The EQ on top and compressor with a wah. You can hear that wah. And compressor 4-band EQ. And go to step 2. Again, these are all duplicates. I'm not going to go through all of them because there's just so many of them. Because basically, even when you get down to here, exciter, what you're having is an exciter and a flanger. Really sounding cool. Where's the compressor with the phaser? And these are a lot of different, you know, we go to 3, same thing. And basically we're having overdrive with a chorus and a flanger. So basically you have an overdrive pedal going into a chorus flanger pedal. And there's a lot of these in here you could play. I like the multi-tap chorus too. So the mix, there's a lot of things in here that basically you can just go in and play with, but they're actually 2 effects in one. Okay, now we're looking at modulation. Stereo chorus, simple. We take the chorus off. And stereo harmonic chorus. Now, what it's doing when MIDI sync off is basically coursing with that note. And then we turn MIDI on. Now it's actually taking that MIDI note and coursing with it, actually giving you another note in there. And biphase modulation. You're getting that real heavy-duty phasing effect. Chorus tap delay. And basically we're having a chorus and a multi-tap pedal. And you can hear that with an effect like this is just a simple tone. But when you add this effect, it almost sounds like brass. So something to think about. Okay, ensemble, we know what that is. It's kind of adding other notes. More like a chorusing effect. Pa5x, same thing. Stereo flanger. You can see when adding the MIDI sync to on, you know, turning it on, it adds that other note in there. Cool. A random flanger. And stereo envelope flanger. This is pretty interesting because if I'm just hitting the note, but when I first hit it, the velocity is increased, so it flanges it. And as the note dies down, the flange goes away. and stereo phaser. And go to 2, stereo random. Stereo envelope phaser. Again, you can hear the phaser kick in, but as the note dies down, the phaser goes away. Stereo vibrato. Cool. Stereo auto fade modulation. So if we hold that note down, stereo tremolo. Stereo envelope tremolo. Auto pan. Stereo phaser and tremolo. Cool. Stereo ring modulation. And basically, it's just a modulating creator, so you can or you can use X. And organ vibrato. Basically a rotary speaker, Leslie. And if we push up on the joystick on Ply, we see this will turn to fast. Pretty cool. And phaser chorus. Rotary speaker again. So when we push up on the joystick Y+, we get it to go fast. And notice that we're just playing this simple note. But with this effect, it sounds just like an organ. And Univibe. Orange phaser. Small phaser. And classic chorus. Classic flanger. and classic tremolo, and black chorus and flanger. And the rotary speaker. Push up on Y plus. Now we'll make it fast again. And I can't emphasize how these effects can change your sound and make it sound real. Again, here's just this note. Just a synth sound. But when we add this effect, it sounds just like an organ. Now let's go to reverb. Simple. This is a hall reverb. And smooth hall. And wet plate. Dry plate. Reverb room. And as you look at these, it's pretty self-explanatory. You can kind of figure it out. A hall is larger. A plate is a smaller reverb, and a room is even smaller. But we can go into like a bright room, which is basically a reverb, but with a little bit more brightness to it. You can hear the reverb is very shallow, but it's brighter. Early reflections is kind of a early reverb type of system. And it takes effects when you're playing. If you go back to that early reflections, you'll see it's not like a regular reverb. It's there, but it's very quick. You can only hear it when you sustain the note. And reverb gate. Basically, this is working a reverb when you're only playing the note. So there's reverb when you're playing the note, but it goes away as soon as the note goes away, follows the envelope of the note. And a reverb spring is basically the old way they used to do reverb. They actually had a spring. And that reverb spring would echo. And if you can hear a little bit of that echo. That's different from our standard reverb. Then this is their reverb, the Tone Lab reverb. Okay, let's go to upper 2, turn upper 2 on. And you can see I have a Strat guitar sound. And let's go into insert effects, go in there, turn this on, hit the triple dash thing, and let's go to amplifiers first. So what we're doing now is because we have a guitar sound, we want to make it sound more like a guitar. So now we have if we turn this off, here's our notes. We turn it on. Turn it off. When we turn it on, you can see that the overdrive and the wah that's actually added in there makes it sound more like a guitar. And we go to stereo guitar cab. Basically what this is
is basically down here, tweed. That means it's a tweed cabinet, which a tweed is a old Fender type amp, and it's a 112. So in other words, it has a 112-inch speaker in it. And at the bottom, air. Air is actually the airflow into the cabinet. So sometimes you'll see somebody say a closed cabinet or an open cabinet. The closed cabinet won't allow the speaker to move as much, but then it gives you more response. So there's different types. And if we go to these different speakers up on top, you can see we go here and we can go 12, we can go 4 10s, 2 10-inch speakers, 2 12-inch speakers, 1 12-inch speaker, and then these are all different amps, so they're going to sound different. We go back to the first one, and they're a stereo cabinet. Now, what basically would happen in this sense, you're not going to hear as much of a sound change when it's just talking about the cabinet. So what you would usually do is add this cabinet to the second effect. So if we go back and exit out of this, what we'd probably want to do is add the cabinet to FX2 and then run the amp and change an amp, put an amp on FX1 and run it into FX2 to make it sound even more real. But for this tutorial, I'm trying to go through this as quick as I can. So let's go back in here. Okay, now let's go to stereo bass cab. It's going to be basically the same thing. It's going to be a cabinet, so we're not going to really hear that much sound change difference, being it's just a cabinet. Bass amp model, here we go. So now these are the bass amps, and you're not going to hear too much of a difference in what I'm playing because I'm actually playing a guitar, but this would be a bass amp simulator. Bass amp with cab. And here's a tube preamp model. And you can hear this is more of a clean sound. And here's a tube simulator, stereo tube preamp. So there's the dry, and here it is wet. There's a little bite to it. And mic modeled preamp. Now this is interesting because what you're going to do is you're going to go over here to type of mic, and it's going to say a vintage dynamic, a multi-condenser, a percussion condenser, drum dynamic, vocal dynamic, multi-dynamic, vocal condenser, vocal tube, kick dynamic, and so on. Because different mics, you might want to put a mic model and a tube preamp in front of maybe a drum sound to make it sound more real. You know, if I wanted to maybe get that snare drum, I go over here and I would actually do a percussion condenser and actually maybe put that on the snare and make that snare sound more real. Okay, so combination and amp. So and go to. Now we're going into a compressor and a gain. Sounds pretty cool. That really makes it sound okay, real. I want to show you an important part of these effects and how they can make things sound real. So if I'm just playing this guitar sound, it sounds okay, but it doesn't sound real. So we bring in the amp, and I'm using a Overdrive HG plus amp sim. Now, it's sounding a little more real. Then I'm also going to bring in the stereo harmonic chorus exit. Now, and then we'll add the hall reverb. Add the reverb. Now we have something like this. Now that sounds so much more like a guitar just by adding effects. Okay, let's go to the string sound. Upper 3, turn upper 2 off. Go here, turn it on. And let's add an effect here. Go to dynamics and stereo mastering limiter. Actually, let's go to stereo limiter first. So basically you have this string sound. And we're going to bring the gain down. We don't want to bring the gain up too high. Make it even. So, and if we turn it off, and you can see how things are kind of pumping. The volume's going up and down. But when we add the stereo limiter and we have a little bit of gain, we'll just add 1 bit of gain. And now, it actually balances that out. And if we go to stereo mastering limiter, now you can really hear it. So use these effects and get experimental with them. There's a lot to play with.
So I hope this video gave you a better look at all the effects you have inside the Korg Pa5x. There's a lot of them. And when you use them, they can really enhance your sound. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. You help us grow the channel. That way we can bring you more cool stuff. So take care, my friends, and thanks for watching.